Hello, my name is Brian Burnham, and I've been tasked by Williamson County Schools to present to you culturally responsive instruction and behavior and support practices. What is culturally responsive instruction, and how do we implement behavior support practices? This presentation will help you figure out those definitions and examples of ways that we can implement these techniques in our schools. A general definition of culturally responsive instruction: it's a student-centered approach to teaching in which the student's unique cultural strengths are identified and nurtured to promote student achievement and a sense of well-being about the student's cultural place in the world. And then behavior support practices are a set of research-based strategies used to increase quality of life and decrease problem behavior by teaching new skills and making changes in a person's environment. Why have behavior support practices become important? Well, specifically because we're wanting to target positive behaviors. We're encouraging appropriate behaviors and trying to curb inappropriate behaviors. Zero tolerance policies that have been in place in the past have contributed to suspension and expulsion becoming common methods of addressing problem behaviors in schools. In fact, they're too common and are actually very detrimental to certain populations, subpopulations of our school environments. What is Williamson County Schools doing to promote culturally responsive instruction, or CRI? Well, we've hired a consulting firm as of spring 2021, specifically February. The firm is called Fostering Healthy Solutions, and they were hired by Williamson County School Board to help the district provide a safe learning environment for all students by creating a culture strategy plan. During the listen and learn sessions, FHS will be gathering feedback about the district. This is the second round of sessions in the series. This is a brand new initiative, so we have not assigned any faculty members to certain responsibilities or tasked them with identifying students or facilitate anything at this time. We will reach out to faculty members as we approach the fall. This will be implemented in the fall. And no students have been identified yet, though we have a pretty good idea of who we're going to target, as we'll talk about in this presentation. CRI is divided into three functional dimensions. You have the institutional dimension, the personal dimension, and the instructional dimension. The institutional dimension is of culturally responsive pedagogy or instruction, emphasizes the need for reform of the cultural factors affecting the organization of schools, school policies, and procedures, including the allocation of funds and resources. That goes back to school policies, meaning also zero tolerance policies. And community involvement. The personal dimension refers to the process by which teachers learn to become culturally responsive. And then the instructional dimension refers to practices and challenges associated with implementing cultural responsiveness in the classroom. What do educators need to know and do properly to properly implement CRI into their classrooms? First of all, we're asking that you explore your own culture. How can we value other cultures if we don't know and value our own first? Take time to learn that. Learning about other cultures. Just do general searches. Let's learn about the Latin community. Let's learn about different types of religions that are in our areas. Let's learn about African American heritage. Being somewhat familiar with multiple cultures allows us as educators to feel more prepared for new students that may enter our classrooms. And then finally, we can learn about our students' cultures specifically. We want to create a culturally responsive classroom, but we can't do that unless we know the cultures within the room itself. Our students come from diverse backgrounds, and it's difficult to be culturally sensitive to them if we are unaware of their background, their heritage, or their cultures. How can I be a culturally inclusive educator? Well, the Kentucky Department of Education in 2020 wrote an article and pulled this list from Schmidt back in 2005. You can read through those 10 items. This is just a quick review of what we can do. Just to highlight a couple of them, we want to create a classroom culture that is welcoming for all learners. We want to intentionally address visual, tactile, and auditory learners in lessons. We want to communicate and work with parents and guardians on a regular basis. Have email distribution lists, newsletters, phone calls. notes home, meetings face-to-face, etc. We want to use instructional materials that relate to a variety of cultures. Students support each other for the success of the entire class. Specifically, here are 10 culturally responsive instructional methods that we would like to start implementing in our classrooms starting in the fall of 2021. Use the students' background knowledge. Knowledge students have help explain their families and their communities and their lived experiences. This information allows teachers to understand how those students process and retain new information. Teachers can help guide students and relate what they're learning in classes to that background knowledge. We also want to build routines for the brain. Using regular prompts on send home assignments, notebook entries, things like that, teachers can become personal trainers of their students' cognitive development. We also want to play word games and boost vocabulary. Active student engagement in vocabulary equals important equity strategy. Boosting students' understanding of words is more effective than a worksheet. Some examples might include word searches, poetry activities, word scavenger hunts. Number 4, we want to tap into their culture. You must know your students well first. Get to know your classroom before we just start willy-nilly implementing culture into the classroom. You don't want to mess up and do something that's not inclusive to one or two students. It goes beyond permanent record folder, not knowing just what's in their file. Get them in class, get them face-to-face, spend some time speaking to them. If you have ways and means to communicate with parents early on, ask them questions, talk with students, ask them questions. You want to truly know about their family life, their history, and the experiences they've had. Survey the classroom environment. Do your walls and your classroom resources represent the students that they serve? Students need to be able to see themselves in the faces that are on the posters hanging up on your wall. Number 6, create a student-centered classroom. Give students a voice. They'll take ownership of their learning and they're more successful because of it. Give students the opportunity to learn about one another. Pronounce names correctly. That seems like a small thing, but when you take the time to pronounce their names correctly, it makes them feel safe and secure. Names are attached to identity. They're words that they have heard their entire lives since birth. Take the time to ask each student what they prefer to be called in your classroom. Learn a few words in the student's native language. Again, this makes a student feel safe. It helps build connection, relationships, trust, and it shows that we care. Communicate goals with students. Setting high expectations for all students is critical. English language learners are not given less to do, so don't set the bar lower for them. They're just going to end up behind. Embrace an asset-based mindset. If a student comes into your classroom with the ability to be bilingual, that's a true asset both globally and socially. Bilingual brain growth is extremely important. What do educators need to know about behavior support practices? Well, we need to be reminded that behavior support practices are a set of research-based strategies used to increase quality of life and decrease problem behavior by teaching new skills and making changes in a person's environment. PBIS, or positive behavior intervention supports, are based on the notion that effective behavior change must not only reduce inappropriate behaviors, but also must teach suitable alternatives. Explicit teaching of clearly defined social expectations and behavioral indicators across school areas is one of the fundamental features of behavior support practices. 10 behavior support practices that we'd like to see started implementing in the fall. We want to start learning labs. You want to establish a common dialogue between families, community stakeholders, educators, and practitioners. This is achieved by all stakeholders reflecting critically on daily tensions and working together to develop an action plan to address them. We're going to work on replacing zero tolerance policies with a tiered and just approach to discipline. These policies have been proven to be biased towards minority students, most so African American students. Behavior support practices are positive in nature, and zero tolerance policies are the opposite of that. Number 3, you want to set clear expectations and consequences for all students. Equal distribution of rules and consequences allows all students to feel that fairness and balance within your classrooms. Create a safe space within the classroom. Students need an area where they feel safe and secure if and when they become deregulated. Allow them to have ownership of the space by helping pick where it will be and what will be included in the space itself. Take time for each individual student. It helps them feel connected and included. It allows for basic needs of both teacher and students to be met. Create an anonymous suggestion box. This might allow a student who otherwise wouldn't have reached out to speak up. Also allows the teacher to stay in touch with some things that may be going on behind the scenes of the classroom with anonymous quote-unquote tips. Some students might speak up without fear of being labeled a snitch. Have a classroom task chart or job board. Students who actively participate in the caring of the classroom feel a deeper responsibility for the space itself. This will allow them to maintain the space in a positive manner while working within it. Plus, it promotes independence. We want to post visual schedules for the students within the classroom. Not only does this help with students with reading impairments without drawing attention to their disability because every other student has a visual schedule, but it also allows students to feel safe knowing that their routine for the day is listed in front of them. We want to allow students to pick reinforcements that are used for desired behaviors within the classroom. Again, this goes back to giving them ownership. We also want to teach pro-social skills and behaviors and give opportunity to practice them. How can we expect a student to behave in an appropriate manner if they don't know what those behaviors look like? Practicing these skills and behaviors are what molding their social behaviors for the future looks like. Who is responsible for seeking out students who would benefit from these methods and practices? We're going to count on classroom teachers, school counselors, and/or a social worker, paraeducators, and then administrators, which are mostly meant to maintain fidelity amongst the teachers for identifying students consistently. What has been or will be the level of impact for each of the groups above? Teachers, it's going to allow you to learn more about the different cultures. It's going to help you gain a better understanding of each student and what needs to be successful as individuals. School counselors and social workers, it's going to allow you to identify teachers to begin organizing their classrooms to accommodate different backgrounds. It allows communication home to be more coherent, organized in the event of a language barrier. Paraeducators, is going to look similar to the teachers in terms of learning about different cultures, but teachers will plan the lessons that are going to be specific to the cultures within the classroom. And then administration, you guys are going to be tracking data and helping plan building level assembly, celebrations, etc. to involve all students. Which students are we targeting? Well, we're targeting all students, but specifically we're going to focus on African American students, Hispanic Latino students, and students who are or students who are marginalized by the system. Combining positive behavior intervention supports with cultural and linguistic variables will help to enhance positive behavior of culturally and linguistically diverse students. What can we do now? What are we looking to do immediately? Well, we're going to begin implementing some of the practices mentioned in this presentation. For example, something easy to do is have an anonymous suggestion box for students to contribute to. Plan lessons that connect the content to your students' culture. Use materials that service a variety of cultures. Also, be specific and consistent within your classroom rules and expectations. Teach behavioral expectations. Model correct social behaviors. Clearly define inappropriate behaviors. It might feel impossible, but it is possible. Here's a listing of our references. Thank you for your presentation and your attention. Let's have a great fall.